Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show, Week 14 Waiver Wire Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to get those fantasy lineups right because Lord knows we got some playoff spots to clinch if we haven't done so already, or maybe just some pride to play for. Either way, attacking that waiver wire with reckless abandon until we cross that finish line. So joining me as she does every single Monday, we do got the one, the only K-Dog in the house, Kendall Valenzuela. Kendall, I hope you're having a great Monday afternoon. I did want to ask you for your thoughts, though, on kind of the long-standing just question in fantasy. Once your team is mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, are you done with the waiver wire?
No, are you kidding? If my teams are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, my heart is set on crushing the souls of my other league mates. That means picking up anyone that they want. That means setting really good lineups and making sure that they don't make the playoffs. No, it's not over. You never give up. Like, even if you're mathematically eliminated, I get it. And some people just say, oh, well, I'm done. I'm not going to do it. And in leagues, like, I think Scott Fishbowl, right? We can't pick up any more players. So, like, if you have rules like that, then don't be that person. But no, now I'm off to just like try and defeat my enemies and keep them out of the playoffs. So no, you have to keep going.
I think the easiest way to prevent this is to have something to play for. Obviously, a lot of leagues will have the loser's punishment, last place. Don't want to do that. So you got to go ahead and keep on fighting. But at a minimum, the one thing I do like, Kendall, is you shouldn't be deciding, the next year's, or if you're like in a dynasty league or something, rookie draft order, like make something there. So if you win the consolation playoff bracket, like there's something to be won there. Okay. You got to incentivize people to not be terrible POSs on the waiver wire.
I agree with that. I think that like people need to look at stuff like that. Total points, I think, is something that I've shifted all my leagues to, because I just think at the end of the day, like a lot of this is luck, Ian. Either you're facing the best team in the league, but they have a ton of injuries. They have all their players on a bye in 1 week. So that's why I always say, like, in the off season too, look at how you can change your leagues. I know some of us, myself included in one, like we're just like, oh, we've been doing this for 12 years. We can't change anything. But like total points and changing to like things like double headers like that, it just makes it a lot more fun the rest of the way, because you could just run into some bad luck. So I'm in one league in the GST with Adam Ronis where I'm going to get in purely based on points. I'm right at 500 right now. I've not had the best season. I know, but look at the total points. I'm going to be fine. So do that.
There you go. I'm indifferent on kind of the, two matchups per week, the person you're playing, and then also the total points. What I do like, though, is where if you have 6 teams, eligible to make the playoffs, give the first 5 spots to the top teams in terms of win-loss, but save that last spot for the best remaining total point record. I do think that is the best of both worlds situation. But again, whatever your league settings happen to be, we do got some waiver wire goodness to get through. So with that, let's get into the show. It is time for our DraftKings opening lines. Monday, December 1st, actually. Winter is very much here on the Fantasy Life Show. So accordingly, we got plenty of head coaches giving us injury updates after yet another chaotic Sunday of NFL action, starting off with Kendall. Maybe the return of Commanders QB1 Jaden Daniels. He has not officially been cleared for contact yet as he comes back from this left elbow injury. And that's kind of been my concern here with assuming Daniels is going to play. For me, it was a little bit different between him and Joe Burrow. Burrow actually seemingly, again, not a doctor here, but seemingly had enough time to fully recover. Jaden Daniels is one of those situations where if the Commanders really don't have much to play for, I do wonder if they're going to put him out there at less than 100%. So this is an important one to monitor because we'll get into QB streamers later. But if we don't see Daniels out there, I think Mariota might be the best streamer of the week, Kendall.
Yeah, that's the tough part. And you just said it, because if you're waiting on Mariota, we've got 4 teams on a bye this week, and at least 2 of them, like if you have Brock Purdy, he's going to be out this week. If you have Drake May, he's going to be out this week after this Monday Night Football game. So those are 2 guys that you might just have to fill in, especially with Drake May, depending on where you got him in drafts. So I'm waiting to see. I'm surprised, Ian, that we would see Jaden Daniels back out there, because with Joe Burrow, that injury happened so long ago. It was the turf toe, it was everything fighting back from that. We watched that Commanders game and it looked like his season was over, no questions asked. So I want to give him the same grace, though, I guess, that we gave Joe Burrow, where it's like, okay, if he believes that he can come back and the team thinks it's safe, then okay, I guess you can put him back out there, because these guys are competitors. They just want to be out there and play. But I'm way more surprised about the Jaden Daniels coming back, because it just looked so much worse than what it was, Ian. And if they're playing for nothing and he still wants to come back, Godspeed, because we'll have him inside our top six quarterbacks, right? We have to.
And excuse us, Kendall, Mariota, right?
Oh,
that's what we're doing
Ian,
now.
what the hell was that? What was that? I thought I was having a stroke in that game. I was like, did I miss something? Has it been me all these, like, for however many years Mariota has been in the league? I always want to say guys' names right, but how did we get this far without knowing that that's how he wanted it pronounced? What are we doing?
That's my thing. Of course, I'll pronounce your name or I'll call you Bill if your name's Jacory. Like, I don't care. But this dude got drafted in 2015. It took literally a decade for us to get this right. Either way, again, we'll talk more about Marcus Mariota here in a little bit. More QB news. Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy progressing through the concussion protocol. In fact, he is symptom-free and he's expecting to start Sunday against those Washington Commanders. So the Max Brosmer experience obviously didn't go very well. It should be 9 back under center there for the Vikings. And the running back streets, also an update for the Vikings. Aaron Jones not dealing with a severe shoulder injury. He is expected to be considered day-to-day per ESPN's Adam Schefter, so good news there. Also good news for the Browns with Dylan Sampson. That calf injury also simply considered day-to-day. Meanwhile, in the wide receiver streets, our one true sun god Amon-Ra St. Brown starting off the week listed as a DMP on the Lions' estimated practice report. Remember, everyone, they are playing on Thursday night against the Cowboys. Quick turnaround for Amon-Ra St. Brown coming off that low ankle sprain will be Jameson Williams and Isaac Tesla. If not, more on Tesla in particular here shortly. Also note Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins remains in the concussion protocol. We'll have a better idea about his chances of playing once we get that Wednesday practice report. Drake London considered day-to-day. Matthew Golden could, quote, potentially play week 14 per head coach Matt LaFleur. Also have the Vikings release wide receiver Adam Thielen. Just such a great, second era there in Minnesota. So good job by the Panthers, scooping up some draft picks in that trade. Kendall, I think the one real interesting note here is that Bucs head coach Todd Bowles, who, we can just trust so much when it comes to injury talk and everything, actually said it's, quote, a possibility that Mike Evans returns to practice this week. We also got Jalen McMillan increasing his participation. Buccaneers, dare I say, getting healthy at the right time?
Yeah, for our fantasy teams, I guess. Well, Emeka Egbuka, Ian, I mean, it has not been good down the stretch. Yeah. It's been pretty, we have to have these conversations where you're obviously, if you have Emeka Egbuka, you're probably playing him. It's the same conversation with Lamar Jackson, but he's not necessarily helping your teams get to a fantasy playoff. Let's just say that. So you know what? I think I remember when he first went down with injury, now we're back at Mike Evans, that they did say a playoff push or early January was his return. So, I mean, if they're getting healthy at this time, I know that it does take away, obviously, if he comes back from Emeka Egbuka. Chris Godwin was obviously back in action last week as well. So, yeah, they could get healthy at the right time. Could be good for Baker Mayfield. Not necessarily great for our fantasy squads, but it's been a little bit of a down couple weeks anyway with Egbuka here.
Wouldn't expect Evans back this week, perhaps a week 15, just in time for those fantasy playoffs. And I will say, as much as obviously coming back from a broken collarbone isn't ideal, I'd be more optimistic about Evans immediately coming back into a full-time role relative to someone who's dealing with a nagging knee or ankle injury and maybe is working at less than 100%. Otherwise, guys, Sauce Gardner, the Colts cornerback, one unfortunately expecting to miss multiple weeks with that calf injury. Not a long-term issue, though, and they are expecting him back before the end of the regular season, so relatively good news there. Also note the Bengals are once again expected to be without defensive end Trey Hendrickson as he continues to deal with this hip and pelvis injury, and also the Browns lost defensive tackle Malik Collins for the season with a quad issue. So that has been our DraftKings opening lines. Let's get into our waiver wire goodness. But first, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. Big gains, big moments, and even bigger upside this week. I have teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give you, a scholar, a new way to get in on the action. With Pick 6, you can ride the upside by making simple predictions. Will a player score more or less than the number listed? You can stack your picks together, and the more you hit, the bigger your payout. And right now, guys, there's an incredible offer for new customers. Play $5 or more, and you'll get $50 in Pick 6 credits. That's right, new DraftKings customers play just $5, and you'll get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly. So don't miss your shot to ride that upside. Download DraftKings Pick 6, get on all the action, and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. Thanks to DraftKings Pick 6 for sponsoring this. Let's make this season one to remember. It's Monday here on the Fantasy Life Show, which means it's time for our waiver wire market watch presented by the fine folks at Pristine Auction. Our top 3 waiver wire ads of the week. We'll mention some other dudes along the way, but again, the big 3 names that you guys are probably reading about in waiver wire articles of most shapes and sizes. That said, I do invite you guys to check out the one that really matters more than all else, and that is Kendall's over at fantasylife.com. Very much free. Blood, sweat, and tears have been poured into that sucker for the better part of the last 24 hours. So we appreciate your service, Kendall, and we appreciate A.D. Mitchell proven to be actually capable of catching the football and crossing the goal line to score a touchdown. Obviously didn't have the best, season and a half there with the Colts, but he has been unleashed as a legit full-time starter with the Jets. And with Tyrod Taylor, Kendall proven capable of, throwing for 200 yards from time to time, suddenly A.D. Mitchell is looking like someone who maybe we can actually trust in the flex spot down the stretch.
Yeah, you said it. Tyrod Taylor's an upgrade over Justin Fields through the air, at least. I mean, he's not this prolific passer that we're like, you have to go to the waiver wire, get him every single week, start him all the way until the fantasy playoffs. But he is someone we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And with an upgrade at quarterback with one Tyrod Taylor, that means you can upgrade at AD Mitchell. I guarantee, Ian, he was doom scrolling, right? He was looking at all your tweets about how he can't catch. And he's like, well, I got to prove this guy wrong at some point. So he did that on Sunday, 8 passes, 102 yards, and a touchdown here. By the way, the best Jets performance by a wide receiver this season, and I'm not kidding. So that's where we're at as a whole for the Jets, I think is what I read. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. But Mitchell, too, he has a good fantasy playoff schedule. So I think if we're talking long-term here, AD Mitchell could actually be someone like long-term if you need someone to pick up, if you've been dealing with injuries, whatever else is happening, he could be someone that you look at because I know we're going to talk about Isaac Tesla, who's really more in a spot start situation this weekend or really Thursday if we don't have one Amon-Ra St. Brown. So AD Mitchell is actually a guy in the year 2025, Ian, that we're saying you could maybe look to start and flex the rest of the way. So yeah, he's definitely at the top of the list. He's going to be at the top of every waiver wire list probably this week, just because what he's shown us. They face Jacksonville, New Orleans, and the New England Patriots in the fantasy playoffs as well. So not too bad.
Garrett Wilson is eligible to return next week, so we'll have at least one more week of the AD Mitchell wide receiver one experience. But I'm with you. If we are actually looking at someone that has potential for multiple weeks, not a given Garrett's going to be back. I do think AD is going to be that guy. So again, making the most out of his opportunities, and this week in particular, guys, definitely not afraid of that Miami Dolphins defense. If you do need a wide receiver for this week, I got AD Mitchell comfortably ranked as one that, again, I do think warrants flex consideration. Kind of let me know if you're okay with this range in my way too early week 14 ranks. I got AD as my wide receiver 36, just behind guys like Deebo Samuel, Brian Thomas Jr., Michael Wilson, but ahead of Troy Franklin, Khalil Shakur, Jordan Addison. Little too optimistic there, you think, or about right?
No, why not? You might as well ride the hot hand, right? If you're looking at someone like, and the guys that you just listed haven't been inspiring, like Jordan Addison. Please, I know people are just like rolling their eyes every time they have to start Jordan Addison. I know we get 9 back this week or whatever we're talking about, Ian, but it hasn't been good. So like with guys like that, at that point, also when you're making those start sit decisions, every single guy that you're going to look at has some kind of yellow or red flag to him. You just want to pick the guy with the ceiling, and we like the ceiling that we saw yesterday.
Again, 30% target share over the course of these last 3 games. Fresh off a legit top 5 finish. Great stuff from the second round pick, who, let's face it, hasn't exactly had the smoothest start to his NFL career. But dang it, Kendall, America loves a comeback story. Speaking of underdog stories, we got Chris Rodriguez for the Washington Commanders taking over this backfield. We talked about him last week during the Commanders bye, and he really did continue to work as the running back one, y'all, in Washington. So yeah, the Bill Krosky merit era was fun and all, but make no mistake about it, it does seem like C-Rod is the new RB1 in town. And Kendall, similarly to what you were talking about with the Jets, I mean, the schedule coming up here really does make the potential to roster Rodriguez pretty enticing.
Yeah, it looks really good. I mean, they've got the 3rd best schedule for running backs according to PFF for the fantasy football playoffs. And I think he's another priority ad. We've talked about him for the last couple of weeks, even going into their bye week. I remember us saying, hey, just go and pick him up because he might be someone that was a cut candidate for some people because they just needed to pick someone up that would give them fantasy points immediately. So you said it. I mean, Chris Rodriguez has, the last 2 weeks, he has 26 carries compared to 13 for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. When we look at everything else a little bit closer there, he just looks a lot better too, Ian. I feel like we can just say that. He just like looks like the better running back. He has outcarried the rest of the Washington running backs, their backfield 4-2 at the goal line over the past month as well. So yeah, I think he's an RB3. I just want to watch and see when Jaden Daniels comes back because that will impact him. I mean, if Jaden Daniels is really going to come back and they're going to give him a full workload and say, hey, go ahead and do what you do, take off on the ground, give us that rushing upside for fantasy football, which we would love, that would hinder him just a little bit. But I still really like Chris Rodriguez for the rest of the season.
And again, I'm not expecting Rodriguez to be this top 10 must-start option, but beggars can't be choosers sometimes, guys. And we're still talking about someone available in 76% of Yahoo formats. So again, Vikings, Giants, Eagles, and Cowboys down the stretch. Those defenses in terms of EPA allowed per rush ranked 20th, 32nd, 13th, and 29th. So I know the Cowboys have gotten a little bit better here, but even if just for that Giants Week 15 matchup, Really do like the potential for Chris Rodriguez. So in terms of the ranks for this week, we do have 4 teams on bye. So with that in mind, Chris Rodriguez comes in as my RB30 ahead of guys like Kenneth Gainwell, Jordan Mason, Michael Carter, and the Bashaw Tutons of the world. One last wide receiver, Kendall. I did want to go through Isaac Tesla, someone who, again, is looking like a locked-in starter in Detroit now with our one true sun god. Unlikely, I will say, to suit up on Thursday. So yeah, we got Jameson Williams balling out, and he is ranked as a legit top 10 wide receiver for me this week. But don't discount Tesla getting going as well against the Cowboys defense that, don't look now, has allowed the most PPR points per game to opposing wide receiver rooms this season.
The most points to wide receivers. You just said it, Ian. Like someone, there has to be a second guy that emerges, right? It's going like, listen, Jameson Williams is going to absolutely feast on Thursday. We absolutely know that. But yeah, Isaac Tesla is one of those guys where if you have the money, you spend for him. Again, this is a spot start kind of thing because we expect, I think they said week to week, well, 1 week to 2 weeks is what I should say here for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And we know that he kind of fits in the Josh Jacobs basket for me where he just always tries to get back as soon as he can because he just wants to be out there. So Tesla isn't someone that we're going to say, oh, week 16, look at this matchup, week 17, because he'll go back down once Amon-Ra St. Brown comes back. But yeah, I really like him. I also wrote up Khalif Raymond, but I checked right before just a couple minutes ago. He wasn't practicing today again with that ankle injury. So I was going to say, if you can't get Tesla, then maybe put a little bit of money on Khalif Raymond. But with him not practicing today and with the game on Thursday, it just doesn't look like he's going to be good to go. So I wouldn't spend any money on him anymore. It would just be Tesla. And I guess in the deeper formats, maybe Tom Kennedy, but that might be reaching a little bit too far, Ian.
JFK's great-great-grandson perhaps could get something going. I made that up. Please don't quote me on that, everyone. But look, with Tesla, I mean, he has been someone where even going back to preseason, we've been hyping up just his ability, okay? Volume's always been a problem in Detroit, but with Amon-Ra, with Sam Laporta on IR and done for the season as well, maybe we could see some more targets go his way. And so far this year, that has been good. Team high, at least for the position, 125 passer rating when targeted this year. I mean, he's turned guys 11 targets and 6 catches for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. And again, that Cowboys matchup is absolutely, freaking awesome for this week. So right now, Kendall, I'm ranked by wide receiver 37, one spot behind AD Mitchell. I'm wondering already, I literally wrote my week 14 article, like this feels a little low. I'm wondering if in a night or two, after 3 or 4 Mike's Hard Lemonades, just so refreshing, if I could actually be bumping him up. So again, right now he's with AD Mitchell, Chris Godwin, and Troy Franklin, but I'm looking up in the top 30. I got Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 26. I got Jacoby Myers and Romeo Doubs right there. Like if you really wanted to sink your teeth in this matchup, I think you could talk about Tesla being a legit top 30 option.
You could squint and tell yourself, like you said, you get the Mike's Hard Lemonade, then you look at the stats, you say, okay, they're facing Dallas on Thursday night, who, like you said, has allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers. Why would it not be Tesla in this? Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is a chance that there isn't even a chance. There should be 2 relevant fantasy wide receivers coming out of this game. And it just, with Khalif Raymond not practicing again today, I think it will be Tesla. So yeah, just take a couple more Mike's Hard Lemonades, Ian, and just get him, right at 29, wide receiver 29. Who says no?
There was one more wide receiver I want to talk to. Actually had himself a pretty great week 13. That is Devon Valet, the Saints wide receiver too. No, we're not expecting a takeover from Chris Olave, but since Brandon Cooks and Rashid Shaheed left the picture, guys, we have seen a full-time role come for Valet. And honestly, he made the most out of those opportunities last week. Caught all 8 of his targets for 93 yards and a touchdown. Also had a smooth onside kick recovery afterwards to help give the Saints a chance. Unfortunately, they could not shock the world and beat, the lowly Miami Dolphins. But with Valet, Kendall, I don't want to get too over our skis here because, again, 93 yards on Sunday, but he was also on the team for the first 10 games of the year, and he had 91 total yards in those games. But it is a new role. And then just looking at the schedule, Bucks, Panthers, Jets, Titans down the stretch. I mean, it's a situation where I think wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 treatment is warranted. And one more big game, who's to say we couldn't expect 8 targets or so down the road?
Yeah, and I wrote up Tyler Shuck as well as someone that maybe you could look at for the Saints. It's not pretty. It's not sexy. These aren't great names to know. But in those deeper formats, you basically at this point, Ian, scrape the bottom of the barrel to hope to try and find anyone. This is the last week with teams on bye. Again, there's 4 of them this week. So you're going to have to look at guys to flex. So I think Valet is a good option here because he's obviously, his playing time has dramatically increased since they traded Rashid Shaheed to the Seattle Seahawks. And then Chris Olave, too, has been dealing with that back injury. So again, I don't necessarily really see them shutting down Chris Olave at all because there's been no indication of that. But this team is continuing to lose. We know that they're really not playing for anything. So it's kind of the same wavelength that we talk about Alvin Kamara and shutting him down towards the end of the season. Like, if Chris Olave really does tweak that, or it gets a little bit worse, or he gets downgraded, I do worry that maybe they look at him and say, we cannot risk this. Like, we don't want to risk Chris Olave being hurt down the stretch when we have nothing to play for. So that's why I think Vele, especially with, like we just said, everything that he's been doing over the past like month or so, and with the back injury to Chris Olave, I do think that he's right there. He's someone that I think should be sneaky this week too, Ian. Like, people might not look at him and be like, I don't necessarily want him. Why do I want anyone on the Saints? But I think he has sneaky upside.
Again, matchups are certainly in his favor. Right now, I got him ranked as my just wide receiver 55, so not going too crazy with it. But that's still the same tier as guys like Josh Downs, Dontavian Wicks, Luther Burdens of the world. Guys who, again, I'm sure are already rostered in more leagues than not. So why not add Devon Bailey to the bench if you do need some wide receiver help? Last point, I did want to quickly just remind you guys, we do have some handcuff running backs that we are trying to keep on keeping on that bench. Blake Corum, Brian Robinson, Samaje Perine, Malik Davis, and Tyler Algier are a handful of them. I'll throw Bashal Tootin in there as well. That, again, if at all possible, I would prefer to keep those guys on the bench, even ahead of some of these wide receivers we talked about. Okay, if you need to start one, yeah, by all means, go get Isaac Tesla out there and try to rack up some fantasy points. But again, if you already have 5 or 6 wide receivers and there's just no scenario where Tesla is going to make your starting lineup, 100 times out of 100, I would much rather have the Blake Corums of the world on my bench. But speaking of Tesla, Kendall, never want to see guys get hurt, but maybe just in the spirit of actually supporting Amon-Ra St. Brown, you could actually go take a look at our presenting sponsors at Pristine Auction, because guys, they have this pretty sweet, if you ask me, signed mini helmet from Amon-Ra St. Brown himself. You can find this and so much more cool memorabilia on their site, and we actually have a very special code for you to help save some of that sweet hard-earned cash. Guys, if you go to Pristine Auction and use code FANCYLIFE when you win an item, you will receive $25 off at checkout. And if you're a first-time user, you can actually register using code FL20 to get $20 in credits added to your account. Again, first-time user, use that code FL20, get $20 off, and then make your first purchase. Use code FANCYLIFE, extra $25. We're talking $45 off in this economy, no less. Thanks to the fine folks over at Pristine Auction. So shout out Pristine Auction and shout out to Sun God. Get healthy soon. Hey guys, before we keep on keeping on here on the Fantasy Life Show, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Huel, who produce a no prep, fast, nutritious, plant-based meal that doesn't actually compromise your health. Huel actually has 2 meal replacement products in particular that have really been helping me avoid skipping meals during the grind of the season, or just feeling crappy about eating something quick and easy throughout the day. Their ready to drink options include all sorts of tasty flavors. Personally, I've been just loving the chocolate peanut butter flavored option. I've talked about the iced coffee as well. Again, yet to really have one that doesn't taste good. And honestly, I can even vouch for my in-laws who also love these things and also just were pleasantly surprised along with me at how full we actually stayed for hours after drinking it. So inside of these, you'll find 35 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, not 26, but 27 essential vitamins and minerals, also no added sugar and gluten-free. And with all that said, under $5 per meal and absolutely ready to go. We also have their daily greens drink, which for someone like me who just despises vegetables in general, really is a game changer. So I've been trying a lot of the green powder and stuff over the years. Not to say that's bad, but I do prefer this drink and just personally think it is much more tasty. These are actually developed by registered nutritionists and dietitians. They include 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods, only 25 calories. Hey, I want to eat plenty of calories this holiday season, don't get me wrong, but I want to stay healthy some parts of the day. These green drinks are helping with that. Also got 4 grams of fiber and just 1 single gram of sugar. So yeah, guys, Huel makes healthy eating simple. They also just launched the Target stores nationwide. You can try both products today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with my exclusive code FANTASYLIFE at www.huel.com/fantasylife. Use that code and fill out the post-check survey to help support the show. Again, that's www.huel.com/fantasylife. Exclusive code FANTASYLIFE. Breaking down the Week 14 waiver wire here on the Fantasy Life Show. Hit some of the bigger names to help you out at running back and wide receiver. But again, Kendall, we got some bye weeks to worry about. Drake May. May is going to be off the, can't start him in Week 14 when he's on bye. Same with Jackson Dart and God forbid Bryce Young and some of these other guys we got rolling there. So in order of our top QB streamers, I do think it starts with Marcus Mariota. And obviously this is dependent on Jaden Daniels continuing to be sidelined. But just based on what we've seen from Mariota, whatever you want to call the guy, Kendall, I do think that just with his dual threat ability in an offense that is also starting to get a little bit healthy, I'll take Mariota over pretty much any other available QB streamer this week.
Yeah, the QB3 going into Monday night. I can't believe we're saying that either. Against the Denver Broncos, no less. Like I know people, when we were talking about it today and breaking it down, it was like, oh, the Denver Broncos, they just didn't look good. How could they let this happen? But on the other side, like the Commanders looked good. Marcus Mariota was dealing in that game. And you said it, like Deebo Samuel's out there, and you've got Zach Ertz reminding us that we can't forget about him. So yeah, I think he's going to be the most widely available as well, or one of the most widely available quarterbacks for you. But yeah, going up against this Denver Broncos team, he put up 23.26 fantasy points, and that's a really tough defense to do that against. So again, be careful, because if Jaden Daniels, it really does come back, you don't want to spend too much of your money, but he shouldn't be one of those guys that people are fighting and clawing their way on the waiver wire to get. So yeah, I think he's going to be at the top of the list just because of what we saw. How could we ignore it?
Yeah, and look, I mean, I know we haven't been throwing super big FAAB recommendations at you guys. It's week 14, okay? If you need a quarterback, go ahead and get your quarterback. You guys know your situation is better than we do at this point. So maybe not the easiest on-paper matchup with the Vikings at first, but I did run some numbers today, guys, and just wanted to see like what pass defenses have been improving or, just really playing a lot worse as the season's gone on. And no one has actually had a bigger drop-off than the Vikings, okay? Number one in EPA per dropback in weeks 1 through 6. They've fallen all the way down to 29th, though, in weeks 7 through 13. So schedule, injury, these things all play a factor. But man, Brian Flores' defense, not nearly as intimidating as they were during the first 6 weeks of the season. So Marcus Mariota, only 9.3% rostered in ESPN leagues, 10% in Yahoo. He would be my go-to streamer of the week. Again, assuming Jaden Daniels is once again going to be sidelined. If we do see Jaden Daniels come back, Kendall, I think we can then start to shift our attention to CJ Stroud, someone also benefiting from his wide receivers getting healthy and went out there and didn't look any worse for the wear after obviously missing a few weeks with a concussion. So CJ Stroud, someone who's not going to give us the same sort of rushing upside as Mariota. But hey, when you do look at him with a healthy Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins out there, there is legit boom potential as a passer, and beggars can't be choosers in this situation. Let's face it.
They can't be choosers. This will be a tough game too. That's the Sunday night game against the Kansas City Chiefs for Week 14.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun one. And we actually have great games this weekend, which I'm so excited about, because what we got this past week or yesterday, I should say, not as fun. But yeah, CJ Stroud is definitely on this list. I think it could be a tough game for both offenses because the Texans are allowing the fewest yards per game. Right now, the Chiefs are allowing the 8th fewest yards to opposing offenses. But I do think that they're going to have to get it done through the air. Like, I don't think that we're going to look at Woody Marks, Joe Mixon, like he's ever even there. Ian, what are we talking about? And Nick Chubb. Like, we're not going to look at them and say, okay, they're going to get it done on the ground. So I do think they're going to need CJ Stroud in this one. So yeah, there's definitely a tier break there where if you're looking around, CJ Stroud might still be floating around out there. So if you need a 1 week streamer, he could definitely be an option for you.
And guys, here, this is how kind of my QB ranks are working right now. Okay, we got Toyotathon Jordan Love as QB 12. Yeah. Right after that, again, Marcus Mariota. I do think he deserves that recognition. QB 14, I got Caleb Williams. Tough matchup in Green Bay. Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, and that's when I do get to CJ Stroud there. So again, maybe Trevor Lawrence is available in your league. In that case, I probably would prefer him and just hope that he runs into the end zone once or twice. God forbid we have the great Jacoby Brissett available, guys. He's all the way up there as my QB 9. So just again, playing the percentages available in 50+% of leagues on ESPN and Yahoo. I do think Mariota and then CJ Stroud are going to be the top 2 guys, followed by Kendall, Tyrod Taylor. When I was going through my rankings, okay, it's one of these things where, basically Sunday night, I try to just outline the show, wake up in the morning, kind of get my first draft of the rankings in, and then I start writing the article. And I originally had Tua as the 3rd quarterback here. I can't do that. I can't, with a straight face, tell the fine listeners and viewers of the Fantasy Life Show to start Tua Tagovailoa with your fantasy season on the line. Now, I understand now that I made a big deal out of it, he'll probably throw for 3 touchdowns and have a great game. But screw that. Give me Tyrod Taylor over Tua Tagovailoa, Kendall. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, Tyrod Taylor got you 21.81 fantasy points on Sunday anyways. And yeah, I'm with you. I can't recommend Tua again. I can't do it, Ian. We'd rather talk about Bryce Young. Tyler Shuck, to be totally honest with you, is probably going to be ahead of Tua Tagovailoa. Like, I just can't go that far. But yeah, 19 passes, 172 yards and a touchdown. Not necessarily pretty. This is, again, the same situation where maybe you go get a cup of coffee, maybe you go for breakfast, maybe you go get lunch. You don't have to necessarily watch the whole thing. But Tyrod Taylor, if you're missing Brock Purdy, if you're missing Drake May, I think he can be a streamer because this Dolphins defense just gave up 17.36 fantasy points to Tyler Shuck on Sunday. So yeah, I'm putting him ahead of guys like Tua Tagovailoa just because, again, we have to have some pride here, Ian, when we get to the end of this.
And I will say this Jets defense, I know a lot of people, once they traded Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams, kind of expected them to fall apart and be terrible. And I'm not saying they're good, but they haven't become this dumpster fire that I think many expected. A little bit of Ewing theory potential here. Shout out to Bill Simmons. But man, it's just one of these things where, again, they really did a good job against the Ravens, holding them to just 241 total yards. And even against the Falcons out there, like, yeah, Bijan Robinson was doing his thing, but he does his thing against pretty much any defense. I do think that the Jets could present a stiff enough challenge to still make life difficult for Tua in a fairly one-dimensional passing attack that, again, other than Jalen Waddle and maybe Darren Waller, more than him a little bit, just doesn't have a ton going for it. So we have 2 games this year where we've seen Tyrod, rush for over 40 yards. And I do think, again, he warrants just being streamed ahead of guys like Tua, Tyler Shuck, God forbid, the Shedeur Sanders of the world. So did see some of you guys in the chat with some quarterback questions. We appreciate you hanging out with us live. Low Bigman is wondering about Jacoby Brissett or Marcus Mariota. In that situation, give me Jacoby Brissett, guys. It's starting to get tougher. Like, we got the Rams and the Texans over these next 2 weeks, but given some of the garbage time factors for the Cardinals and stuff, and just their willingness to embrace the Jacoby experience, Kendall, no team has a higher dropback rate over expected than the Cardinals since week 6. So not saying it's going to be beautiful in this matchup, but at the same time, Bryce Younger's threw for 3 touchdowns against this Rams. Why can't Jacoby keep the good times going?
Exactly. It's Brissett it and forget it. That's what Gene Clemens likes to say. So just Brissett it and forget it. Like, if you're, and yes, he's at the top of the list too. Like, if he really is, for whatever reason, still out there, you're going to go and get Jacoby Brissett, because we also got the news that I saw right before the show started that the Cardinals aren't opening Kyler Murray's practice window this week either. So you could maybe essentially get him for another couple of weeks, or maybe, Ian, we just don't see Kyler Murray back. Jacoby Brissett is better for our fantasy teams and Trey McBride overall as a whole. So yeah, I think Jacoby Brissett, again, is at the top of this list from the players that we talked about. We just don't mention them because usually I think he's over 60% rostered the last time I looked. Yeah. So that's why we don't mention him. We usually talk about guys 40% and under. But just know, if like those top guys, Jacoby Brissett, Sam Darnold, for whatever reason, if they're still out there, you want to go and get them.
Can't overstate the heater that Jacoby is on. I believe only Josh Allen has more fantasy points per game since week 6. And he's averaging, Kendall, 312 passing yards per game. It's only since week 6. So it's not a whole season and everything. So the stats a little bit skewed. But since 2020, the only 2 quarterbacks to average more passing yards per game than that across an entire season, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Right, Kendall? Jacoby Brissett, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Just exactly who I thought we'd be discussing in the same conversation, this entire season. So there was one more question from our guy. Let's see who it was. Sorry, Mr. Scamper's always hanging out. QB streamer for May. Goff versus Dallas, Baker versus Saints, or Darnold versus the Falcons. I do lean Jared Goff right now, guys. When you actually do kind of get into the QB1 rank side of things, it is a situation where I do have him ranked the highest. So I have Jared Goff as my QB8, one spot behind Lamar Jackson. I couldn't quite do it. We'll talk more about Lamar a little bit later.
Okay.
I know, Kendall, it's so tough, but I got Goff QB8, Jacoby QB9, Baker QB10. If you wanted to bump Jacoby up there, I think that's fair. But I guess for me with Baker, if we get Evans back, that's one thing. But we just haven't seen this passing game clicking in recent weeks. I understand no Sun God makes it a little bit tougher to believe in Jared Goff. But also, as much as that Cowboys defense with Quentin Williams, like the line of scrimmage has gotten awesome, I still don't really have too much respect for that secondary.
Yeah, no, we're still going to pick on them. While they have gotten way better since the bye, you can still just say like, okay, there's holes. Like, we know you can look at the whole team total. You can look at the total as a whole in this game for Thursday. Yeah, I think Jared Goff would be in that one. And you said it about Baker, and it's, Ian, like the yards are there kind of for Baker Mayfield, 273, 173, 41 against the Rams, 194 for Baker Mayfield since their bye. But yeah, 16, 3.54, 14.46. That's when he got hurt 2 weeks ago, 22.92. He's come down off that really, really hot stretch here. So again, we've talked about it, but hopefully they can get back on track. If they really do get Mike Evans back in the next couple of weeks, that would be big. Chris Godwin already back out there. Emeka Egbuka, please, for our fantasy sanity. Like, let's just get things going, because again, Atlanta, week 15, at Carolina, at Miami. That's a nice schedule for the fantasy playoffs.
You know what? Let's have the Lamar conversation right now, okay? Because this was one of those things where I want to see how far I could move the guy down. I did put Matthew Stafford and Dak Prescott, guys I honestly never would have dreamed of putting ahead of Lamar ahead of him this week. But at a certain point, I do think we need to try to look at his numbers objectively and not through the hate and the pain that it's been having Lamar on your team and having to deal with. Let's face it, 3 straight just horrific matchups. He's had 4.7, 7.2, and 6.5 fantasy points, and not actually horrific matchups, horrific performances, I should say. say. We've been actually hoping for an even bigger ceiling because he's gotten to face the Jets and the Bengals over these last 2 weeks. So on the one hand, Kendall, I think we can agree he is not anywhere close to fully healthy right now. Came back from the hamstring injury, and he's since missed the first practice of the week with knee, toe, and I think foot injuries. Like, it's just one new thing after another. Not going great there. So I get it. We're not getting the rushing upside, but we are perhaps understating what he can still do through the air. Lamar Jackson this year, guys, 8.1 yards per pass attempt. That's the second best mark of his career. That's the third best mark in the NFL. And it would be even higher if he just got a smidge of help from his friends last Thursday night. So I do not blame anyone for taking a nap on your couch, at 8:30 p.m. instead of watching Ravens Bengals, big Thanksgiving Day and all that. But look, as much as we see quarterbacks deal with drops every single week, we don't see quarterbacks deal with drops and, sheesh-worthy moments like Lamar had to last Thursday night every week. Okay, guys, we had Isaiah Likely fumble a football through the end zone that otherwise would have been a 40-yard touchdown. We had a pretty freaking ticky-tack OPI penalty on Zay Flowers that nullified another 36-yard touchdown. And then Devontae Walker, God bless the guy, let not one but two 40-plus potential gains bounce off his hands. So Lamar Jackson, Kendall, even if we're not getting the dual threat alien upside, I still think there's a lot of passing upside on the table here. I can't rank him lower than QB7. I just can't.
Okay. QB7's not bad. I haven't done mine yet, obviously, because you are the GOAT and you get those done so early. So shout out. Everyone can go and find Ian's rankings at fantasylife.com, and you should. Ian, I don't know. You weren't able to get anything done, though, against a Bengals defense that was giving up 32 plus fantasy points per game coming into that night. Like, I understand the drops, right? Zay Flowers had not even one full PPR fantasy point in this game. But to me, Lamar Jackson, if it wasn't going to happen in this game, it makes me nervous how we could say going forward when it is going to happen. And I know the Steelers that's a good matchup again, but Adam and I talked about it on Fantasy Life Radio. Like we said, if he can't get it done against the Bengals, when are we ever going to feel good about it? So that's my only thing. In my mind, like mentally when I was doing my rankings, I was like, maybe I'll have him at QB9, but we have 4 teams on a bye this week. So I do think that makes it a little bit tougher. If we had everyone available, I would think QB9 was probably where I was going to have him. But when I really sit down to do them, he's probably going to be closer to QB7 because, like you said, Drake May is always inside the top 5 for most people. Brock Purdy isn't there, but he's in the conversation inside the top 10. So I just get really worried that, only 27 rushing yards. That's the 4th time in the past 4 games he's been held beneath 30. It's just not Lamar. We know that. We're going to see at the end of the season, they're going to say exactly what he was playing through. It's going to be 5 different injuries, and we're going to know that he's going to bounce back from it. But if you can't get it done against the Bengals, when can we be happy or feel good about putting him in our lineups going forward? I just don't know.
And again, it hurt, but that wasn't on him. We're talking about a difference legit of 2 touchdowns. That's 8 fantasy points, another 100 plus yards. That's 4 more. Like, I'm pretty sure, guys, if we would have had an extra 12 fantasy points on Lamar's total, we would have felt fine. And I'm not even going through like every single play, like, if Lamar had made a better pass here, like, no crap. Again, we can do that for every quarterback. Like, these are pretty just clear cut moments where it's like, don't fumble the ball as you're scoring a touchdown, or don't have the referee make a bad call when you actively did score a touchdown. I really don't think I'm reaching too much here. You guys might disagree. I get it. But to answer, again, another lovely question from our chat, I am going Lamar over Mariota. Maybe famous last words. Yeah. I never could have dreamed, Kendall, that this would be a legitimate conversation in week 14. But I'm still here with Lamar Jackson. And just reminder, guys, as much as we have had bad 3 weeks, at his best, Lamar remains one of the most dynamic and best quarterbacks that fantasy football has ever seen. I'm going down with the guy. Come on, Lamar. We believe in you. Enough QB chatter, though. Kendall, let's get into some tight end streamers because there actually are several big names who I do think could be tight end ones the rest of the way. You guys are tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. It's one of these things at tight end where based on any kind of week of the season, maybe there's 3 or 4 guys you can feel good about. And guys, this week, I think there are 5 to maybe 6. Okay. So we got the usual suspects at the top: Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, Tyler Warren. And I'll give Jake Ferguson the benefit of the doubt as well. I think if Dalton Kincaid returns from his hamstring injury, he's set up fantastic at home against that Bengals defense, where we also believe Joe Burrow and company can put some points on the board. To me, that's just a great spot there. So I feel good about those top 6. After that, Kendall, I think there's like 8 or 9 other guys that you could potentially, decide to put in that tight end 7 spot. So I want to start off with look at Jaguars tight end Bretton Strange, someone who I actually bumped all the way up to tight end 8, because let's face it, this guy is playing fantastic. He has been Trevor Lawrence's number 1 target this year in terms of passer rating when targeted. Really is, fulfilling his prophecy as a day 2 pick, athletically gifted tight end from Penn State. They just seem to, breed those guys over there in Pennsylvania. And I just think it's a situation where going up against a Colts defense that, hey, don't look now, 3rd worst group in the league in PPR points per game allowed to tight ends. Bretton Strange, top 8 option at the week, Kendall. Are you with me?
Ooh, I'm with you on that one. He's my top tight end that you can find in my waiver wire article at fantasylife.com. So right on the same page, Ian, because you said it. The Indianapolis Colts, you love the matchup. They've given up the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. He actually faces them twice. So I know we're probably not going to get Sauce in this one this week, and he might be back in time for their second matchup against each other. But yeah, Bretton Strange was able to, return. He had the 2nd most targets and receiving yards going up against the Titans. So I just think that, he is someone that 14.8% target share. You finish with 3 receptions, 45 receiving yards, and a touchdown. But at this point, if you don't have one of those top tight ends, like you said, you should be looking at just matchup-driven tight end decisions for yourself on the waiver wire, because there's situations where you just say, oh, I'll just keep playing Chigakonkwo, but you could really be getting better days from other people. So just keep looking, even if you're not in it, like we said at the beginning of the show, even if you're out of it, you should still be making these moves to make your team just as good as it can be going into week 17 and just the start of the fantasy playoffs. So yeah, Bretton Strange top of my list because they faced the Colts twice before week 17, by week 17.
It's still available in 68% of leagues, guys. So again, it's had back-to-back nice games coming back from the IR. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more by the time the season's over. Also want to talk up Darren Waller, who came back in his first game from IR himself and had a very nice 69% route rate, and also is blessed with a pretty nice schedule coming up here, Kendall. Over the course of these final 4 weeks, we get the Jets, Steelers, the Bengals ring the freaking fantasy alarm there, and then the Buccaneers to close things out. So I just think with Darren Waller, like we've seen him this year really do a great job scoring touchdowns right when we finally got used to trusting him in Fantasyland. Unfortunately got injured, but hey, again, similar to what we were talking about earlier with Mike Evans, it was a pec injury for Darren Waller, which isn't ideal, but I think it also reflects the reality that we did see that immediate, near full-time role in his first game back. That should only get bigger. So I don't think we have this like ramp up period to worry about. And accordingly, we could be getting Tua's number 3, dare I even say number 2 pass game option available on the waiver wire. So Darren Waller for me, Kendall, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, my tight end 9 in week 13, 14.
I'm too. Yeah. I wrote him up a couple weeks ago just saying in deeper formats, play the long game with Darren Waller if you have the ability to put him on your bench because of the fantasy playoffs. Like you said, any team that's facing the Bengals, you want to go look right now. Who's facing the Bengals week 15, 16, 17, because you are going to play those players, obviously, in the fantasy playoffs. So you get the Bengals, you get the Steelers, and you get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from week 16 to 17, and you want to load him up. 68.9% route share, 13% target share. I know 47 yards. No touchdowns. You're not necessarily happy if you had to play him this past week, but you're playing the long game with him. And so I think, again, the Steelers and the Bengals have allowed the 6th most and the most fantasy points per games to tight ends. So if you did pick him up, or if he's still out there right now, you're in those deeper formats especially, you're going to want him for that stretch.
So again, starting off with Bretton Strange and Darren Waller. That said, Kendall, the 3rd and final tight end we want to talk about actually is my highest rated one of the week. I think it might be irresponsible, but dang it, I believe in Harold Fanning, guys. We actually have now seen a full-time every down role come to fruition here. 90% plus snaps, not even routes, legit snaps on the field every single play, more or less, over the course of these last 2 weeks. I tweeted out a video earlier today. You guys should check it out if you so please. Basically just showing all the forced missed tackles, I should say, that this dude has forced. Just cannot say enough good things about this dude as a freak among freaks on the gridiron. So this week we get the Browns against the Titans, and we'll see what happens with the weather. Always going to be a little bit dicey in Cleveland in December, but just as things stand, like we've seen, whether it be Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, each and every single one of these quarterbacks has been willing to feed the ball to Harold Fanning, and why the heck not? My tight end 7, Kendall. And again, it's wild to say that. He's right there with Strange, with Waller, but like my order right here, okay? It's Harold Fanning, Bretton Strange, Darren Waller, Oronde Gasson, who's, not exactly been killing it as much as he was before, We'll see if we have Justin Herbert, Juwan Johnson, Zach Ertz, Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert. Like Andrews and Goddard, you're praying that they score a touchdown. I like Juwan Johnson, what he's been doing. I don't think he necessarily needs to get the benefit of the doubt over these guys. Similar sentiment with Kyle Pitts. It was a nice game from Zach Ertz. That's not going to be, a weekly thing though, particularly with Terry McLaurin getting more of a full-time role. So again, I think it's a really big range. And just looking at these guys, I think Harold Fannin might be the best actual real-life player of the group. So why not just take him?
Yeah, you might as well. And he's a cheap option too. He's probably floating around a lot of waiver wires right now. He hasn't gone past 50 receiving yards since week 8, I believe it was when I looked last. But he's led the Browns in targets in each of Shedeur Sanders' starts. And they said that he's going to get the start again. So I believe that they said that for this coming week. So he's averaged about around 10 fantasy points per game in those games with Shedeur Sanders. So it's really not a bad option. It's just crazy to say out loud tight end 7. But again, Ian, once I sit down to do my rankings, you'll probably look around. And again, same conversation. Once you get past those top 5 guys, you look around and you say to yourself, okay, well, there's not there's not one person that sticks out where you say, have to have him here. I mean, Kyle Pitts moves around all the time and it's all these other guys. So they have some kind of yellow flag, red flag to their names if they're not inside the top 5. So yeah, I could see it. And I think he's going to be a starting option in most leagues, even with the limited ceiling. You at least like what he could give you with Shedeur Sanders.
And I'm not saying it's going to be tight end 7 rest of the way. I do think that's in his potential range of outcomes, but especially this week against the Titans, guys. Like, we've actually seen that defense stand up pretty well against opposing rushing attacks that aren't headlined by Jonathan Taylor. So I do think if there was going to be a game where we could see Shedeur Sanders flirt with something close to actually good NFL level efficiency, this could be the one. So again, top 3 streaming tight ends for this week: Harold Fannin, Brenton Strange, and Darren Waller. 3 options that, again, I legit think offer rest of the season tight end 1 upside. Kendall, real quick, want to get down and dirty in those DST streets, and starting off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know I've been talking about them forever, but they're still only rostered in 23% of ESPN leagues. They had the New Orleans Saints this week, which, yeah, guys, again, just based on Tyler Shuck being a rookie, only making his 3rd or 4th professional start, we can get behind that. And saw them finally get back on the right track yesterday here against the Arizona Cardinals as well. Forced 2 turnovers, got Jacoby Brissett down twice, held them to, only 17 points. So I know they were getting, fleeced before them. That's what happens when you face Drake May, Josh Allen, and Matthew Stafford in 3 consecutive weeks. So again, good enough job against the Cardinals. I think they'll still finish, as like a kind of low-end DST. Saints, Falcons, Panthers, and Dolphins the rest of the way. Tampa Bay is, again, my preferred DST for this playoff stretch. If you can't get them, though, again, looking at units that are, kind of rostered in under 25% of ESPN leagues, we got the Chiefs at home against the Texans, the Dolphins at home against the Jets, the Commanders on the road against the Vikings, and the Titans on the road against the Browns. That would be my order, Kendall. Anything you'd change?
Yeah, no, I like that order. I think Tampa Bay, too, is one that might be slept on, but you look back and it's a different team. I know when we look back and say, well, they played the Saints before and they put up a good amount of points there, won that game 23-3, if I remember. Yeah, I looked it up. So I just think that that's a really good call out, and especially for their rest of season schedule for defenses as well, compared to, I think it's good. You have to start looking, Ian, because New Orleans isn't playing for much, except for pride. They're not playing for anything. You have a Tampa Bay Bucks team that's really has to start putting it all out on the line. That's also what I look for in some of these defenses, like guys and these units that have to step up in order to keep their seasons alive. And so I think Tampa Bay is going to come out in this one and just go really hard. And I like the Chiefs call it as well against Houston. And then, yeah, I think the other one that you said was Dolphins at Jets. So Dolphins, yeah, these are and Commanders. Like, what are we doing? Anyone against the Minnesota Vikings? I feel like, Ian, you could really look to stream and just say, you know what, this quarterback situation isn't going to work. He's not a quarterback whisperer this season for Kevin O'Connell. So the Commanders at 2.7% rostered. Yeah, give me that one as well.
Because again, the perfect blend we're trying to get with these defenses are a good real life unit, ideally a unit that kind of encourages teams to try to pass on them. That's how we get sacks and negative plays, the things that we get fantasy points with a good matchup. But then that great point you brought up, Kendall, we need this to be a competitive team with actually a good offense. That's why the Browns defense hasn't been a complete world beater all season long, because they've had these unfortunate games where, they just have their back against the wall because Dylan Gabriel throws 3 picks or what have you. So I actually did run the numbers last week in terms of looking at the best DST schedules for the rest of the way. And other than Tampa, like you just don't really see that combination. Okay. So the top DST schedules, this was weeks 13 through 17, so it could change a little bit, but it should mostly be right. Giants, Saints, Buccaneers, Jets, Dolphins, Titans are the top 6. Again, Tampa Bay really standing out as the only one checking those boxes. We do have the Bills, the Ravens, the Eagles, rounding out the top 10. So I do think those guys, especially the Eagles, could still be, relevant, and also defenses that you might want to actually start ahead of Tampa Bay. But again, looking at actually who is available, those guys in more leagues than not are not. So with all that said, guys, that has been the bulk of our waiver wire breakdown. Before we get out of here, let's break down the sheesh report, some of the near miss moments from week 13. Couple categories we like to run through at the end of our Monday show here on the Fantasy Life Show, just to help, get that tilt a little more fresh in your mind about how close you were to having fantasy glory. Guys that were tackled down at the 1-yard line did not score a touchdown on the same drive, and then also unrealized air yards. So we're going to start off with the tackle at the 1-yard line and did not score a touchdown list. Probably the shortest of the year, Kendall. I was actually very pleasantly surprised. Didn't have to relive a ton of heartache here, and several of the guys even ended up finding the end zone on another drive throughout the game. But either way, we did have Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, Kamani Vidal, and yes, Isaiah Likely via that fumble all get all the way to the 1-yard line, but unfortunately couldn't quite get that final 3 feet and score the touchdown. So the James Cook one especially just sucks, man, because obviously lost a fumble there as well. Like 177 total yards and just not absolutely crushing in fantasy. You don't see that too often, Kendall.
No, and it just goes to show you like this Bills offense. I mean, thank goodness Keon Coleman scored, right, Ian? That's really just probably helped so many people in their days. But yeah, this offense as a whole, if it's not James Cook and Josh Allen, we probably aren't starting anyone. Besides, we've had this conversation before, maybe Khalil Shakir, but it's just Adam and I were having the conversation. What 3 fantasy offenses are really exciting to watch right now? Or 5. It's really tough to name like 5 really good offenses that we love to watch week in and week out. And the Bills definitely aren't in that category right now.
Khalil Shakir 3 weeks ago racked up -3 receiving yards. And then he faces, the league best Texans, has 110 against them. So, okay, we can feel good about this. No, we cannot, just 5 yards in that game against the Steelers. So incredibly tilting. Josh Allen, James Cook, hopefully returning Dalton Kincaid. And that is about it in Buffalo. Also wanted to give you guys the unrealized air yards leaderboard. As always, this is just a nerdy way of trying to quantify the total air yards on incomplete targets. So when you have someone like Malik Washington, they have 4 incomplete targets thrown their way. Okay, those are all at the line of scrimmage. They aren't that big of a deal. But when you have some of these other players, when they're getting incomplete targets, sometimes it can be a sign of a lot of missed downfield opportunity that you would like to think could correct itself in the future. And thus, maybe there could be some value here. So overall, we had 8 guys actually see 80-plus unrealized air yards, headlined by Scary Terry McLaurin with 133, Nico Collins with 123. Still good to see him find the end zone. Have yet another good game. Been pretty good, more or less, the last, handful of weeks here. I know he had a week 12 dud out there, but still more good than bad. Christian Watson, Mitchell Tinsley, Zay Flowers, George Pickens, Devontae Walker, and Jordan Addison all in there as well. So kind of already did my, diatribe, whatever that word is, on kind of the Ravens and the things that went wrong there. But I did want to give a shout out to Christian Watson, Kendall, because even though he is on this list, is someone who has been playing some really good football. The wide receiver 27 in PPR points per game this year is Christian Watson. That's ahead of guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Stephon Diggs, and Roma Dunze. So maybe we see Jaden Reed back soon, but I don't think he's going to be taking Watson's work. Matthew Golden still remains a little bit uncertain. Christian Watson coming back from that knee injury and making plays. Gotta love it.
Yeah, I gotta offer Christian Watson an apology because first of all, Ian, I didn't even think it was going to be a timeline that we would see him back at until December, like mid-December. I figured was the timeline for him. So for him to not only come back, but for him to put up, 18.3, 9.9, 20.6 fantasy points over the last 3 weeks, it's been really good for Christian Watson. And that's why I want to say too, Ian, like I think people need to be careful on Dontavian Wicks this week too, because they're going to see him on waiver wire articles. But I just be cautious because he doesn't make a lot of lists because I know they're going to see all the yards, all the fantasy point totals from the game that they played on Thanksgiving. But Matthew Golden, like you said, Jaden Reed could be back. Like both have primarily played in the slot, so you want to be just a little bit careful on Dontavian Wicks. This offense as a whole is already so hard to figure out. So don't spend all your money on Wicks thinking that you're going to get someone that you can start week in and week out the rest of the season.
Because again, if one of Golden or Reed come back, Wicks is going to be, I believe, the odd man out. So it was a great performance. Love seeing some of the man coverage stuff we dive into hit there, and it did work out for Wicks. But again, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, still going to be the top two guys in that offense more weeks than not. But guys, that's going to do it from K-Dog and your boy Ian here on the Fantasy Life Show. We'll be back though Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, of course, Sunday night as well. Helping get those fantasy lineups right and hopefully clinch that playoff spot and then win the whole freaking thing. So again, make sure you guys check out Kendall's Waiver Wire article over on fantasylife.com. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Monday, Tuesday, whatever day it is that you happen to be joining us. So for Kendall, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, take care, everybody.